Welcome to the CBT Dive, a vodcast that goes into the lives of real people with real struggles. Each episode welcomes a new guest who wants to explore a challenging situation using the most common cognitive behavioral therapy tool, the thought record. Your host, Rahim, is a social worker and psychotherapist based in Toronto and well known for his work in LGBTQ communities. He's created the CBT Dive to demystify what therapy can look like and share intervention skills for wellness. We hope that each episode helps you along on your own journey for insight and self-compassion.
Hello. I'm so excited to have you here today. Sogand, how are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I am pretty fabulous. Sogand, where are you located?
I'm in Edmonton, Alberta, Treaty 6 territory.
And what time is it there?
It is 10:12 a.m.
And I'm only asking that because I relocated for a little while to South Africa. So I'm in Johannesburg and it's 6:12 p.m. So I'm really excited to be connecting with you from the other side of the world.
Yes, I'm excited too.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to tell our guests a little bit about you. And then I've got, just like 100 questions for you. So
no worries.
Today, my guest is Sogand, who is the founder of SC Wellness Inc., which is a holistic, inclusive, intersectional, trauma-informed approach to mental health. She has a master's degree in counseling and a BA in psychology with a minor in sociology. She's fascinated by the human condition and human behavior. She's undertaken various certifications such as cyber counseling, lifestyle and wellness health coaching, therapeutic art, and interpersonal violence over the lifespan. And from what I read on your website, you've also done some suicide intervention training.
Yeah, I'm trained.
Cool. And based on your social media, guests, who already know of you might know that, you really explore things about mental health, but also body positivity, social justice, religion, and your feminism comes through in all of your your posts. So yeah.
Yes, so that's the plan.
Yeah. All right. So again, I'm excited to have you here today. We first met through a community collaboration for Salam Canada. And for folks who don't know, Salam is a national LGBTQ Muslim organization in Canada. It's volunteer run. And its mandate is basically to carve out spaces for LGBTQ Muslims across the country. And during the pandemic, during the first wave, actually, I, as someone who is part of the national core team, decided with our other pals that we really needed to move some of our in-person programming to the virtual space. And Sogand was happy to step up to the plate to do some virtual programming. So what drew you to Salam's work?
So I've been an advocate for, safe spaces for like a decade, I think, more than a decade. And honestly, I was doing my nails one day and I was watching an Islamic lecture. Yeah, I do them, it's a self-care thing. And I was watching an Islamic lecture. I do weird things, it's the weird things I do together at the same time. And I didn't like his approach to the community. And I didn't like it so much so that I was inspired to do something about it, because not liking it is one thing. But I'm in a place now where I can make some change because I'm a business owner. And so I just literally Googled like LGBTQ2S plus Edmonton Muslims. And a professor at Grant MacEwan University came up and I stalked him. I called Grant MacEwan and I told them what I just went through. And I was like, I must be connected with him. And they gave me his email. And then I emailed him. That person was
Junaid, I imagine.
Yeah.
And if I'm not mistaken, you both have a Persian background. Is that right?
I didn't know that he has a Persian background.
You know what? I might be making stuff up. Let's go on. So you connected with this person at MacEwan.
Yeah, I like messaged him and I told him how passionate I am about this topic more so now after that lecture. And I want to do something about it. And he connected me with Salam Canada. And so then we spoke and you took me on and it was such an honor. That was really like, like one of those times where you're like really proud of yourself. That was one of those times I was like, I did that. I found them. I hunted them down.
Yeah, you did a thing. And look, we will have you back for more.
I cannot wait. I thoroughly enjoyed working with you, all of you.
Okay. I love that. I really appreciate that. I think for so many queer and trans Muslims, even though we are really dedicated to supporting each other and creating our own spaces, a big part of us is often looking for affirmation and support from a wider Muslim community. And, I won't ask you the name of the person who you were listening to who you didn't appreciate, but for our listeners.
He's cut.
Done. Never again.
Done. We're done. We're not friends anymore.
Totally.
He doesn't know I exist, but that's fine. We're not friends anymore.
You know what? There's a lot of other people that know you exist, so that's great.
That's so sweet.
And so, the professor you mentioned at McEwen, Junaid, I think his last name is Jahangir. I'm not sure how to pronounce the last name. And then there's like Amina Wadud, and there's Muhsin Hendricks, there's Imam El Faroukaki. There's like some big folks in the community who are really talking about what it means to be queer and Muslim, and also shifting cultural parts of the way Islam is practiced to be more affirming and expansive, to include women in a more affirming way, trans people altogether, and other queer folks. So we're in this movement together, which I really super appreciate.
We sure are. It's about time.
Yeah. Well, Sogand, here's my next question for you. You are a visibly Muslim woman.
Yes.
And for folks who are listening, who are like, what does that mean? Well, that just means she wears hijab. And I wonder for you, what does it mean to be a visibly Muslim woman who's also a mental health professional? And that could be in general, it could be in the Canadian context, it could be in the Alberta specific context. What does it mean for you to be able to do that, or to be all of those things?
I truly love showing up to spaces and being a veiled woman. Like, I love that I'm fully covered from head to toe, and I demand it is what it is. You're not going to see more than this. Deal with it. Cry about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you're going to listen to what I have to say. I feel like it's very powerful because, you know what? The reason I started covering to begin with was I was just tired. I remember when I was like in junior high school, elementary, there was a magazine called J14. I don't know if you remember. It was a millennial magazine. You remember? It was
I think we're a similar age, but I don't remember it.
Okay, so I used to get it like I had like a subscription. Okay, and I always felt so down because I never looked like, the hottest trends never suited me. I never looked the part. I didn't feel included. There was no representation, and I was just like tired of it. So when I turned 18 and I decided to start covering, I was like, well, no one looks like me, so I'm just going to create my own wave, and like that's been my thing. And still no one looks like me. Now they really don't look like me. It's fine. It's fine. I'm not trying to make people look like me. My whole job as a feminist is to inspire people to create your own path and write that path, And so when I go to panels, when I go to workshops, when I do anything and I show up this way, I think it's so powerful because people, if they have biases or anything, then that it shows up. But that's their problem. But more than anything, I love being in that position of power. And I'm really nothing like they've ever experienced. I love that. So in the mental health field in particular, I really advocate for intersectionality and diversity and inclusion. And I show up as that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And
so I love it.
If I may, you've got eyelashes to the gods.
Oh. My friend runs a business and I bought these from her and she's great. I can give you her info later.
You know what? You know what? I don't want to brag, but if I just add a little bit of mascara to my existing eyelashes.
Okay, you
know
got
what?
it going on. All right.
I don't have the best lighting right now.
Yeah, no, I see you. I see you though.
So when I think about you as a visibly Muslim woman and a mental health professional, I'm thinking also like, where does that take you? Who do you get to reach? What do you get to talk about? What do you personally get to experience and achieve? You know, I feel like that persona and those titles and that person you are takes you places and gives you new experiences and allows you to impact other people. I'd love to hear a bit more about that.
Okay, I was just moving. Sorry about all the sounds. My foot was falling asleep. So, you know what? I've actually been really privileged to talk to a lot of like really important people in Alberta. You know, I had brunch with the former premier of Alberta, like last, you know, before COVID hit, right before COVID hit. We've done lives together, her and I. I've been connected with so many other NDP politicians. So that's really cool because again, I show up as Sogand, the covered woman who's a mental health professional, and the other things that I am to these spaces. So it's been such an honor connecting with politicians. It's been an honor connecting with, you know, personnel at the University of Alberta. That's been something I'm really proud of. University of Calgary, post-secondary institutions, because I'm a nerd. Like anytime a post-secondary institution reaches out to me or wants to do something with me, I'm like, listen, the nerd status is like, is screaming. Like I'm so happy.
You're there for it. I love that.
You know, it's the academic world, the political world, you know, and then there's the grassroots world. I love, you know, nonprofit work. I love doing workshops. My favorite thing to do is public speaking and workshops, alongside the one-on-one work that I do. And that's me really connecting to community members. Yeah. So it's been amazing. I love what I do. I love life. It's good.
Yes. Okay. No, I really appreciate that because, you know, sometimes people I know in my own community wonder about why, and they'll ask like, why do you need to be so visible? And it's hard to articulate the joy that comes from it. And also like these unique opportunities. And I think you named them, you know, when you get to talk to specific people, you get to shape the way, you get to shape the current discourse around certain things. And that's really pretty fucking fabulous, you know? So
it is fabulous. I mean, there's some cons. We'll get to that when we talk about social media.
Yes.
But when it comes to like just the presence and voice, I thoroughly appreciate, you know, being like Sogand's voice. I'm not trying to be the voice of people. I'm not trying to empower people. That's not my thing. I'm just trying to take space and encourage people to do the same because I feel like we need to. And I'm just fulfilling the dreams that I had that I never was in J14 magazine. Okay. I'm trying to,
you know what?
I'm trying to reclaim.
You know, just tag them in a thing. I think they're ready for it.
I don't even think they're a thing anymore. I don't even know. I'll do some research. I'll get back to you on that. I don't think they're a thing. What? I think it's cosmopolitan now.
I'll find a magazine here in South Africa that will love to feature you. I'll make it happen.
Okay. Yeah.
We could be those girls.
Contacted me. An editor from Cosmopolitan contacted me and we were in touch for a little while. So there was like a little ting, but I'm all for that South African thing. Yeah.
Okay. Look, you mentioned doing workshops and public speaking as being really fun for you. I think whether like I work as a therapist, you know, and I think for therapists, mental health professionals, people who do even outreach coordinating work in nonprofits, life coaches, there's this ongoing conversation where people are needing to and wanting to talk about the value of working in a community you belong to, right?
Yes.
And it's powerful, it's meaningful, but it also comes with its own challenges. It's not always easy. And I wonder if you could speak to that a little bit from your experience. What's been valuable and what's been challenging?
Valuable has been, I'm always about connecting with people and relatability, creating like a thread of relatability between us so that people feel safe and included in the conversation. So I love doing that. And I do that wherever I go. And my workshops are fire, I must say. Just because like people interact with me, I create like a bond with them. Like I don't like talking at people. I like talking to people. And so like when I do my workshops and public speaking, that's what I feel, you know?
Right.
So that's lovely. I don't really think like in person, I can't say there's been much negativity in person. Of course, you can see that some people, when you walk in, you know, look at you some type of way, like, what is she doing here? Like what, you know, because people have, you know, fixed ideas about Muslim women, right? Not everybody, but a lot of people do. And such as, you know, she's oppressed. She doesn't look like what I've seen on TV. That's the problem. That's the problem. You don't see me on TV. We got to change that. If you see me on TV, then we won't have these issues. You know what I'm saying? You know, you see Muslim women and, you know, like the media has been for a long time portraying people of color, religious folks, you know, there are some biases in the media, right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, if people have only ever seen that and that's the only contact they've ever had with Muslim women, and they see me in a workshop, you know, they might look at me like, what happened? Like, is this a teachable moment here? Or
yes, I see.
But that's like, I used to, like, when I first started this work, I was like such a people pleaser, right? I think like we as women, we are like groomed socially to be people pleasers, right? And you have to like unlearn it. And you have to understand, I've been doing this work since I was like 19. You know what I mean? I only started really doing it as SC Wellness when I became a registered business. But prior to that, I was just doing workshops and public speaking for like a decade just because. And so, you know, in the beginning, it bothered me when people looked at me in a way that I knew, you know, psychologically, we know what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah. And as empaths, we know, you know, and as spiritual people who like read energies, I can tell, like, you know what I mean? Like, I can tell when your energy is off. So, but I would internalize all of that. And I would be like, they just don't like me. How can I show up more likable? Now I'm like, you know, that's changed now. I don't care to be likable. I care to be valuable. Right.
And,
so,
you know, Sogand, like when you talk about wanting to be more likable in the particular way that you described it, is had to do with how you understood people perceiving you because you're visibly Muslim, and then you thinking about wanting to change. And that sounds to me like a really good example of what internalized Islamophobia can look like, you know? Which we don't like, doesn't get talked about a lot. And I wonder if when you speak to other Muslim folk, you work with other Muslim folk, do you have conversations about internalized Islamophobia?
Absolutely. But it's not just that, it's also internalized misogyny. And it's internalized fat phobia. So internalized misogyny is the idea that women need to be people pleasers, right? That's like all of us as women have like, I can't say 99.9% I feel like have been groomed to appear to, you know, like be likable, right? A lot of cultures enforce that, institutions enforce that. Like there's just a lot of that. And so it was that. It was also internalized fat phobia is like, you know, I'm taking up too much space here. I wouldn't be taking up as much space if I was in a smaller body. So there was a lot of things. And you know what? I remember my first sociology course that I took, bless his soul. I love that teacher. I remember he like talked about this. That was the first time I understood internalized racism. He talked about internalized racism. He was a South Asian man, you know, in sociology, and like was just talking about internalized racism. And I was like, oh, I think I have some of that too. And it's not like internalized racism as in like for me, it was like, I'm showing up as an Iranian woman. They have ideas about Iranian women. Do you see what I'm saying? But like, I don't actually know that they have ideas. No one's told me.
But you're picking up on things. Yeah, you've internalized it. And I'm guessing you are also like there's the racism, but there's also a narrative that goes with that, right?
And I think that's a narrative that you just accept, like it's exactly amongst you. My
Right.
allergies are just...
No problem. You just sneeze away as you need.
No, it's because my cat, listen, I like sniff her and I like inhale her knowing that this is going to happen after. It's okay.
You know what?
It's fine.
We all make choices.
Yeah, that's my choice. Yeah.
Have some side effects. That's all right.
For sure. So yeah, that's that. But yeah.
So again, I'm really interested in like talking to you about mental health from different cultural perspectives. So you are Iranian. I am South Asian, which is like Gujarati, influenced by a bit of an East African background because my parents were born in Tanzania. I'm curious to know it doesn't have to be your family, but in your community or communities, how do people talk about mental health, or how do they conceptualize mental illness? What's the language around it? How is it seen?
It's absolutely such a taboo still. Honestly, I prescribe to a lot of different communities. So in all the communities I belong to, I don't even like the word mental illness, to be honest with you. I feel like the word illness is a stigma. Like, I feel like it stigmatizes people. Like, you're ill, you're abnormal, you're different, you know? So I always like to call it mental health challenges or mental health obstacles. You know, I feel like that's a little bit like less like harmful language. So when it comes to mental health obstacles, I feel like there are specific things that, you know, like anxiety. Everybody has anxiety, you know? Depression, it becomes a little like, you know, and then like, you know, and then you add more things onto it, like, you know, like stress. I feel like an anxiety people talk about like openly, like, oh, I'm so stressed out. Oh, I'm so anxious. But you take it to the other mental health obstacles and people like have a lot of guilt and shame around it. And I see that across every community I'm a part of. And whether it's with their own partner, intimate partner or partners, or their family or their friends, like I see it, like there's still such a stigma. And then people who come to see me will often be the only one in their family seeing somebody. And I'm 100%. Like, you recognize you're breaking like a huge generational curse, right? Like you are
exactly,
you know, and like carrying on some generational blessings too, to be here, but breaking a huge curse. So typically I will say most of my clients, it's their first time seeing somebody, or they've had negative experiences with other mental health professionals. And I'm like their last try, you know?
Yes.
So there's a lot of like that, like hush, hush, you know, like within like the circles that I see. And then a lot of the people that I work with also.
Right. There's this interesting push and pull with clients, service users, participants in the work we do, when they kind of, they look at how we show up in the world. And I think this is probably true for both of us. And they're like, you kind of look like me, and that's a good thing. But you're also, something about you's far enough away from the things that are scary. You know, like you're a bit far away from my family or my community or my friends, or you're doing life in a way where I kind of feel like you're like this middle ground. You're going to be safe to talk to. Do you get that sense as well?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Like you're just far enough, like, you know, and sometimes I'll get people who don't feel like I'm far enough. And then there's a lot of like, this is going to stay between us, right? Like, you know, and I'm like, for sure.
Yes.
Or you are bound. I'm bound by the contract you signed. Like, I can't say anything to anyone. So there is a lot of that too, but it's understandable, right? When you've never opened up to anybody and then you choose this person, whether you've seen them or you know them or they're acquaintances or, you know, whatever, it's still scary. It's a very scary, vulnerable position. So I understand why people feel that way. Totally. Valid.
How do you respond to, or how do you integrate language or conceptualizing of mental health challenges or obstacles when people talk about jinn, which is, for people who are listening who don't know, a concept of spirit possession, or a nudger or evil eye, which is like being the object of someone else's envy or contempt. It can look like different things. And I know for me, I'll just start off by saying, for me, I find I sometimes I find it like that language is helpful for me to connect with other people who are conceptualizing illness or obstacles in that way. I do personally find it challenging sometimes to integrate it into how I see the world, because it is, I do see it a bit differently. And I just wonder what your experience with that has been, or if you grew up with language like that to understand mental health obstacles.
Yeah, so this is actually an area that I'm doing research in currently. So the nerd in me is looking at pagan practices prior to Islam and how many of them we still uphold, and how there's a lot of pagan practices that a lot of spiritual Muslims adopt and use, and so that's currently my thing. And when you talk about pagan and Wicca and witchcraft and stuff, people are like
they freak out a bit.
Yeah, because of those narratives that we've been raised with about like jinn and evil eye and, stay away from that world and all these things. And I feel like that's very much fear induced. And a lot of my work is taking away fear from, the narratives of people's stories, whether it's fear like induced by society, fear induced by family, fear induced by tradition, or fear induced by religious/spiritual personnel. And so that's something we openly do, a lot of the work that we do. And I normalize that world does exist, in my opinion. I do believe that the spiritual world exists, and some people do work with the spiritual world, and some people stay away from it because they're afraid, or because they have, doctrine against it. But the reality is, if you believe that it exists, I'm going to validate that it exists for you. You know what I mean?
Of course.
But mental health is different, and I think for so long, not just in our cultures, but even in like the Western cultures, like people were put in, institutions for having mental health concerns because they were seen as demonic, or like that something was wrong with them. Our history is quite dark in the Western part of the world, where now mental health is being talked about more often. Our history with mental health was a lot of like putting people away because they had mental health challenges,
Yes.
And so I feel like this is something that all of us can relate to. And I think the more we talk about it and the less we take the fear away, the more we can actually talk about, because there's fear associated with those things, jinn, evil eye, the possession. And then there's fear associated with like anxiety and depression. Like, you know what I mean? It's all fear. Totally. The common denominator here is fear. So if we talk about like what creates that fear and what gives it life, then we can actually have an open and honest conversation about what's really going on for you. And for some people, they really do feel that there's a presence, and it's been impacting their life, and that's valid. I believe that too. And for some people, they've been told it's a presence, but they're like, no, I really have some challenges mentally, and that's valid too.
Yeah. Yes.
That's
I really appreciate that. I find, I've worked with a lot of queer Muslims and know a lot of queer Muslims, and queer people in general have a lot of good reasons to be resistant to institutionalized religion. And, it often depends on like who their imam was or who their pastor was and their denomination and all of that. But as a whole, they have a lot of reasons to be skeptical. But I also hear the same people talk about, during difficult times in their life, relying on spirituality, prayer, the community that comes from ritual, like going to like, I was just thinking, I had an experience in 2017 when I came to South Africa for the first time. It was in Cape Town. There was a gay imam, Muslim Hendricks. He led a prayer. And I was in a room full of like 200 people who were women, queer people, trans people. And I remember for so long, I was so resistant to this institution that I thought was harmful. And yet, I came all the way here for a queer Muslim conference, but there was a prayer circle And it was so beautiful. They were drawing on a lot of Sufi tradition, and they were reciting the dhikr, and people took turns giving the khutbah, and hearing from women and trans people. To me, like, it brought me to tears, and I thought to myself, this isn't about like belief and faith and a whole way of life. In this moment, it's a spiritual experience, and there's something that I'm really getting out of this that is good for my well-being. And it has to do with, for me, in that moment, it has to do with ritual and community, and solidarity. And there's like nothing can erase how beautiful that was for me.
I love that. Can you invite me next time, please? I would love to attend.
I totally would. I will.
I too will come to South Africa.
Sogand, we are switching it up here. I want to talk to you a bit about interventions. So, so many of us on our profiles, on our websites, we say we're trauma informed, we're anti-oppressive, we're all of the things. And we are, but that for the most part is our approach. It's our lens. It's the things we draw on to create emotional and cultural safety. I'm curious to know, in some of the art therapy coaching and the lifestyle coaching, the mental health support you provide to people, do you rely on specific tools, and do any of them tie in with cognitive behavioral therapy tools?
Absolutely. Yeah. There's a lot of the work that we do is challenging the narratives that people have about themselves, narratives that have been formed and formulated by social upbringing, family ties, friends, partners, etc. And, a part of that is I have most of my clients do journaling work, affirmations, I have a lot of them like put affirmations that they create on like the mirror if they have like body dysmorphia challenges, or if some of them have made affirmation jars. I've made some of them affirmation jars, so that when they need that like change in cognition, because, it's very difficult to like talk yourself out of an episode sometimes. So you have to change the behavior, right? CBT. I have them, pull out their affirmation jar. Some of them, when it comes to changing their behavior with the art therapy coaching that I have, I get them to do a mandala color in an adult coloring book, do some painting, movement therapy, movement is so important. Especially with the work that I do, I always ask them to do some kind of movement because you want to change around that negative energy somewhere, Sorry,
I just want to clarify, is the movement, is it because you're specifically doing body positivity work? Do you want to get people in their body, or is it in general a thing you gravitate toward?
No, it's just to move around the energy. It's less about.
Oh, I see.
Unless the client tells me like I have goals of wanting to be more active, I have goals of wanting to look not really look a specific way, but like accept what I look at when I look in the mirror. But for me, it's more so like we need to move around this energy because everything is energy, right? If we're talking about what's happened to you, we had a heavy session, you're doing the work, the homework in between sessions. We still want to work around the energies that have been like blocked somewhere, I do like chakra work as well. Like I'm being trained right now and like, throat chakra, crown chakra, all these things. And like what it means for them to be blocked from a mental health perspective. So movement can help with that too. And so I tell them like, is it possible for you to do a walk today? Can you do a nature walk after this? Can you do a bath? Like change up your behavior instead of just like sitting there and ruminating. So a lot of the things that I do is CBT influenced. And then I actually do, when I see that those like, those self-talk patterns are really stuck, because for a lot of people, they're really stuck because that's what they were told about themselves their whole lives. I get them to Google Cbt Worksheets. And so many lovely mental health professionals have created so many worksheets that are free. And it really forces the person to be like, do I have evidence of this thought? No, I don't. What is the evidence against it? And it really gets them cognitively out of it. So yes, I use CBT in different ways all the time.
really appreciate that, because I have students that I teach in schools of social work mainly that are resistant to CBT because they're like, oh, how can I do this in a way that's anti-oppressive, or is it too individualistic? And I often will say, no, look, I think you can do any kind of counseling, coaching, or therapy in a way that's bad and causes harm. And you can also do it in a way that is like nuanced and supports the person. And I really appreciate the way you're talking about it. And when you talked about like getting folks to do things that make them feel good, I often find that they're like, in CBT, we call that like behavioral activation, and I often find that it's really challenging to get people to change behavior without changing their thoughts. So just say, do this, do that. And I like that you're pairing it with like affirmations, right? Because that's essentially the alternative or balanced thought. Here's a question. Has CBT been helpful for you?
Oh, for sure. For sure. Like me as a person, as Sogand, or me as a provider?
No, you as a person, Sogand.
Oh, you know what? I'm actually in therapy right now, as I mentioned before we started recording. And she does, like when you do this work and you go to therapy, you can see what the interventions is being used. And so I know sometimes she uses CBT for me, and for sure, sometimes, I too get stuck in, like I'm also unlearning things. I'm also overcoming things and accepting parts of myself. And so definitely, but I also do energy work. I also go to an energy healer. And so she also challenges my like existing beliefs and stuff too. Yes. So whether she knows it or not, she's also doing CBT interventions on me. So absolutely.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think it's important for people to know that you're in therapy, that, I've been in therapy for a long time. Mostly my therapy has been from a psychodynamic and psychoanalytic perspective. I had one Gestalt therapist. And a lot of the CBT I've done has been in like peer supervision groups. And then the training I've done, and I've done so much of it with clients, and when it's with students, I just pick a personal thing and we work through it together, because I'm like, I'm going to get something out of this. And I truly, do enjoy it. But I like that you're saying you also do energy work, because there's this emphasis right now on evidence-based. And I think, the things that feel good and the things that are working, are evidence. Like if we say it's helping, that is evidence enough. And so like, I personally, like I've seen an astrologer, I've done drama work, I've done artwork, I've done all kinds of, a number of therapeutic things that I think they get at traumas and experiences of stuckness, in a similar way. And frankly, like sometimes, like for a lot of people, it has to be in combination. It can't be just cognitive. It just can't.
No, it can't. And a lot of people are over the cognitive stuff. You know what I mean? They're just tired of it, especially if you've had trauma with mental health professionals, which I see a lot of that, unfortunately.
Yes.
You're over like the talking part and you want something practical, tangible. So, like the energy work that I'm doing, it's interesting because my energy healer yesterday, she's like, you should really consider getting certified in something. And I was like, so that I could provide more energy work. Because right now I just like, a lot of the work that I do in sessions is getting clients to be comfortable with their own energy shifts, right? Like, and it shows up in like conversations with your friends. Like, where's your energy at after you interact? Or when you go on a nature walk or connect with nature, look at pictures of nature, what does that do for you energetically? So I get them in touch with their energy. And then that's when they feel that stuckness, because with the stuckness of energy, you feel it. The more in tune you are, you feel it. So energy work's also really important. I use a lot of different modalities. And I think that's why I just call myself like a mental health professional, because I don't want to label myself as just one or two things. Because as you can see, I use like 17 different modalities.
Yes.
In one go.
Now, Sogand, tell me about you and TikTok. You have over 200,000 followers. I'm curious to know, like, what do you think draws people to your videos, to your messages? And do you see like social media as like a psychological intervention? Tell me a bit about this relationship you have with social media, because girl, you've gone off the charts.
Thank you. You know what? Social media, I have a love-hate relationship with social media. I've curated my Instagram. Yeah, for sure. I've curated my Instagram to be a very loving space. TikTok, I have not done that yet because TikTok, I haven't figured it out really, to be honest with you. The videos of mine that go viral are quite literally like random, like, you know, and that happens to a lot of people who go viral. They like wake up and they're like, oh, that's the one that you guys wanted to see. The ones that are like orchestrated and like well thought out, in my experience, don't do as well. It's the ones where I'm like clapping back at somebody psychosocially or like really schooling somebody psychosocially that like really get. Yeah. So I have like 6 videos right now that have hit 1 million views, which is wow, right?
Bananas. Yes.
Yeah, bananas indeed. And I don't know what to do with that information, so I just don't do anything with it. I'm just like, all right.
Yeah.
I don't know who's watching me. I can't tell. I'm not sure.
But tell me a little bit. Okay, so the ones that went viral, or even having as many followers as you do, what messages do you think people are gravitating toward, or what is it that they're gravitating toward that's about you?
I think the fact that I don't look the part, I don't look like what they expect. It's the same thing, right? It's the same thing that I was saying in the beginning was like, people can't put me in a category, and that stresses some people out, right? I can totally see like the people that like create fake accounts just to like, you know, try to put me down, which happens a lot. They're very obviously uncomfortable with the fact that they can't put me in labels and categories. Like it's like stressing them out. You know what I mean? And I love that. Like I live for that because I feel like we as human beings are so multidimensional. We are so beautiful and powerful and like not one or two things. Like you can't label us, you know? And for so long, people have tried to identify people by labeling them. And it stresses people out that they can't label me. And I think that's why people gravitate towards me, because they're like, I like her, but I don't know why I like her because she goes against everything I feel like. You know what I mean?
And what are some of the messages that, like, there's some themes in your messages from, you know, and I follow you. What would you say the themes are that, girl? Well, you know what? I'm not really on TikTok because I'm not like, I have an account, but I follow like 2 people on TikTok, but I follow you on Instagram.
Okay. And I'm like, what?
No, TikTok overwhelms me, to be honest. So I'm just...
It is very overwhelming. This is very true.
So what are some of the themes that you bring out in your social media videos?
You know what? TikTok, I created TikTok just because I knew Instagram was going to be competing with TikTok as it is now. And they've made it very clear. But now I gear it much more towards spiritual abuse and religious abuse and psychosocial abuse. I feel like religious abuse and spiritual abuse are not talked about very often. And I try to bring light to it. And I find that there's always a really positive feedback. Of course, the people that want to hate will hate regardless. Like I just like somebody literally told me to breathe different. Like that was literally one of my comments. So, I mean, there's, literally, you can't make this up. So those people will be unhappy regardless of what you post, right? But the people that I actually care to gravitate towards are the people who have been victims of things. I actually don't like the word victim, survivors of things. You know, victim means victim mentality. We don't like that. Survivor mentality. Of things that, unless of course you identify as a victim, then that's a different story. Anyways,
I hear you.
You know, people who have gone through things and have never felt comfortable to talk about it, to even acknowledge it, you know, they come on my page and I don't really hold back, to be quite honest. And so it ruffles a lot of feathers because this is things that people maybe have experienced and have never felt comfortable, but hear somebody talking about it, you know? But then I think it creates a safe space for people to actually be like, that happened to me too. You know? Right.
And a lot of your messaging is, from what I've seen, there's an intersection of mental health and identity. Would you say that's
Yes.
accurate? Yeah.
Absolutely.
And when people are resistant, what parts are they resistant to? Are they like, hey, how come we're talking about mental health? Or are they saying, are they attacking your parts of your identity? What about you are they resisting?
Mm-hmm. Definitely parts of my identity. No one really attacks my mental health because I look like I know what I'm talking about. But the identity for sure. Like, why is she dressed like that? Why does she look like that? She there's so much fat phobia. There's so much misogyny. There's so many women telling me like, have you considered doing your hijab differently? It'll look better. No, I don't want to do it different, Or like, women with bodies like yours should not wear tight skirts. Says who? Why? Just say I look good. You know what I'm saying? Like, or just like leave. Like, it's you don't gotta. But they like want to make their mark so known. Unfortunately, as a feminist, it hurts my feelings when women do this to women because I'm just like, fam, we're fighting the same war here. Yeah. We're fighting a system that doesn't want to see us win. Why are you coming at me? I'm your friend. Like,
no, totally. And but those are projections, really, right? Of their,
for sure.
Like internalized fat phobia and the culture of fat phobia we live in.
Yeah, for sure. But when you go viral, sweetheart, and you get 500 of those comments a minute, it starts getting to you. And so now I have a social media manager that I'm like in the process of like doing work for, because I'm trying to not see these comments anymore. That's a mental health thing.
I was just going to say, like I wonder about people who have gotten really big, talking about mental health, identity issues, social justice issues. There is a range of responses. And then how do you take care of yourself when you feel like you're being attacked? It already takes so much to put yourself out there.
It does.
And then when you get negativity, at the end of the day, you're still a strong, powerful person. You have a lot of followers and, a lot of supporters. But we all know that the negative comments leave a residue. They stick. For sure. Right? For sure.
There's a 5-to-1 ratio. We know that it takes 5 positive comments to outshine a negative comment.
Totally.
That's a lot. Yeah.
That is a lot.
So what do I do? Energy work and therapy. I complain to my therapist every single Monday. Every Monday night I have therapy and I'm just like, another video went viral.
Right.
So she, but like with her, it's like, why does this still hurt my feelings? Like what is, cause I know it's a projection, right? Like we know like on a mental level, why people are acting this way, but the words that hurt you are messengers of wounds you still need to heal from. So that's like, I do therapy work. I really think everybody who like is putting themselves out there should be engaged in some kind of like healing work, because people's words are ill-intended, there's some bullies that just like bully you with their words. And then there's some bullies that bully you with intention to hurt you.
100%.
And because I also do energy healing work, I know which ones are ill-intended to like really, and they do really bring down my frequency. So now I have a pattern as of this morning, in which my energy healer, and I'm going to be posting her and I'm going to be tagging her if anybody ever wants to know who she is. She's awesome. Her name's Crystal. Shout out to Crystal. So she sent me this like meditation that I'm going to try to incorporate every morning before I check social media. So then I'm not checking from like an empty, I'm checking from like a high vibration. So then it's less likely for these comments to impact me. And then I want to do the same thing before I sleep, is like, because in the past, social media was before and after I wake up and go to sleep. And that's not, and I think that's the case with most people.
It's not sustainable, right?
It's not, and it impacts you. And even though you may think the words aren't hurting you, it might trigger something and show up, because we know trauma shows up
in all kinds in different
of ways. So I do a lot of self-care, a lot. I really, alhamdulillah, praise be to the divine.
No, alhamdulillah is allowed to be said on this podcast.
All right, alhamdulillah, praise be to the divine that like I do have ways to navigate the upsets that I feel with social media. So that's the negative stuff. But positively, I have been connected with so many phenomenal individuals like yourself.
I was gonna say,
who are out here, showing up as themselves. I love it. It like fuels me. It really fuels me. And I'm just like, okay, like we need to. This is important work that we're doing.
Yeah.
Because we didn't grow up seeing people like us,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I hear that. All right. So again, it has been so good to have you on the CBT Dive. And before we end, I'm going to ask you to ask me a tough question, and I'm going to try to answer it in just 2 sentences.
What did you take away from this conversation with me? That's not a tough question.
Interventions should be done in combination. Energy work is very important to do in addition to cognitive and behavioral interventions.
Yes, love it.
Beautiful. Look at this. Dun, da, da, da.
Yay.
All right. Sogand, thanks so much for being on the show. I have all of your social media handles and places where people can reach you in the show notes, but I would love for you to just say them out loud in case someone, is listening and wants to follow you immediately. Where can they find you?
Okay. So you can find me. I have 2 Instagram accounts. I have Wellness with Sogand. Sogand is with a 0, not an O. And after Sogand, it's _. And then I have Sogand, same thing, 0, not an O, _. And then my TikTok is also Sogand with a 0 and _. So those are the 3, the rest of the stuff I have a YouTube channel too. Hey, you can subscribe to me on YouTube. I will be coming back. I think that's you will, just actually. My full name. Yeah, I hope so, because I'm trying to come back with a bang.
Oh, you are? Okay. I only said that because you're doing so well on TikTok. I don't know if you would go back to YouTube.
No, I need to go back to YouTube because 3 minutes is just not enough for some topics. You know what I'm saying? So
you know what? In fact, I do. I have a podcast for this reason.
Therefore, So the plan is to get people on TikTok to go to YouTube to watch story time. Pertaining to what I talk about. So my YouTube, you just put in my full name, and then that's my YouTube channel. I'm pretty sure.
And I'll put a link for that in the show notes.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you again for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Have a good day. Bye.
You too. Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to the CBT Dive. Don't miss an episode. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at thecbtdive.ca. You can also listen on the go, wherever you get your podcasts. To follow Rahim on social media, check out ladyativan.com. See you soon.